Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chersak Airamirat. I'm the director of Siriraj Health Science Education Excellence Center. Today, I would like to welcome all of you to our session in Pulse in Medical Education. And this month, we are very privileged to have Professor Roy Phitayakorn from Harvard Medical School to come to give a talk to us. Okay. I know Professor Roy Phitayakorn several years ago when I was in the United States. He studied medicine at University of Pittsburgh, and I crossed paths when we study in the Master of Health Professions Education program at University of Illinois at Chicago. And he, besides the part of education, he also has a surgical training like mine. He trained in general surgery at Case Western Reserve University, and he continued his fellowship in endocrine surgery and simulation at Harvard Medical School. He worked extensively in surgical education. He has many positions in organizing committee of various organizations related to education at United States. He published a lot of works. He has more than 90 papers in peer-reviewed journals and more than 50 articles in many other platforms of publications. His work is addressing a lot of fields in education, and it is very fortunate for us to have him with us today. He has worked a lot in surgical education, technical skills development, non-technical skills, and he also have a lot of work in educational technology and simulation. And today, Professor Roy Phitayakorn from Harvard Medical School will come to share his idea with us about educational technologies, AI simulation, and its application in medical education. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Roy Phitayakorn.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with all of you. I do not have any disclosures, except as I told the group earlier this morning, my tie is horrible, but it's a pleasure to meet all of you, and I look forward to learning from you. As you heard, I've done a lot of different roles in medical education, and I've been an education consultant for quite a long time. I also used to work for our simulation center, and then I was a education research and development coordinator for the New England Journal of Medicine. I've then have done a wide variety of roles since then, but I'm very eager to learn from all of you today. Just to give you a little bit of background, Mass General Department of Surgery has got about 135 surgeons. We have about 30,000 faculty total within the Harvard Medical School system. Mass General Hospital is one of the primary teaching hospitals for Harvard Medical School. And then my department's about 135 to 138 surgeons. We have 12 divisions. So it's a pretty large department by US standards. And the thought that people have, or the stereotype that people have, is, oh, you come from Mass General, you come from Harvard, money must grow on trees where you're from. And I tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. So everything we do has to be done with very low resources because there's so many other people competing for money. So everything I'm going to show you today is essentially free. And I want to make sure you guys have the opportunity to see it. Now, that being said, there are going to be better education technologies out there, but you have to pay for it. So it's important you realize that, that the ones I'm going to show you, I think will work great, but they are free. So, like many things in life, the free things maybe are not quite as good as the things you pay for. So we're going to talk today about who should be using these education technologies, why you should consider using these technologies, and then how to use these technologies. So first off, the who, and I give you a little word of caution here.
Emma. 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 It's get on my Emma. Oh, Emma. Emma?
So the moral of this video is that just because we are talking about education technologies does not mean you have to use education technology for everything. Okay, many of us came through medical school, residency, fellowship without education technologies, and we turned out just fine, right? We are still excellent clinicians, right? The point of today is to show you the possibilities of using education technologies. Now, whether you are the faculty on the left and you are the, early adopter of technology, you love gadgets, you have a Fitbit, you have a, Alexa, all that sort of stuff, you love that sort of thing, that's great. But you can also be the traditional faculty, right, that does very active teaching and only uses a little bit of education technology. Either one is perfectly fine, right, perfectly acceptable, okay? But I'll show you some of the potential. Okay, so the who is basically everybody, right? So everybody should consider using it. But there are some concerns, right? Especially when you talk to older faculty about education technologies. So here's a quote for you. For this invention will produce forgetfulness in the minds of those who learn to use it, because they will not practice their memory. Who do you think said this? Or what do you think they're talking about? What invention? What'd you say? ChatGPT, good guess. Earlier.
Maybe just the computer.
Computer, earlier. Calculator, earlier.
Pencil and paper.
Even earlier. So this was Socrates from Plato's Republic, 370 BCE. And the invention he was talking about is writing, right? Which at this time was done on wax tablets with a stylus. Okay? He felt that writing was cheating, because if you write everything down, you don't have to memorize anything. You can just look it up later in the book. So that can't be good, right? It must be a bad invention. But what he didn't realize is, again, the possibilities, right? That by writing knowledge down, we can expand our minds and expand the amount of knowledge one human brain can hold, right? So again, just possibilities here, okay? Now, how about its reach? So how long does it take technology to have 50 million worldwide users? Okay, and this is a survey done by the Distracted Mind. So radio took 38 years to have 50 million worldwide users. Telephone, 20 years. Television, 13 years. Cell phone, 12 years. Internet, 4 years. Facebook, only 2 years to have 50 million worldwide users. Angry Birds, 35 days. Angry Birds 2 was 15 days. Now just think about that as a teacher. Can you imagine being able to teach 50 million students in less than 1 month? All right, if you're lucky as a teacher in one whole lifetime, maybe you have a couple thousand students, right? But education technology gives you the power to reach so many more people so much more efficiently, okay? But as the great, Spider-Man said, right? With great power comes great responsibility, right? And you have to be careful how you use it. Now, our learners are different, okay? So in the traditional sense of learning, at least in the United States, we would argue maybe about 20 years ago, we were very much about broadcast learning, okay? This is the idea of what they call sage on a stage, right? So the professor is standing in front of the audience, right, with all the slide notes and just lectures and lectures and lectures, okay? The student's job is to be a sponge. You're just supposed to receive all of this information and store it in your brain, okay? And then when it comes time for the exam, you spit it all back out again, okay? Everything that you can remember, okay? Nowadays, we're all about interactive learning, okay? And again, for the United States at least, this is happening in first grade. So from the very, very beginning, these kids are now exposed, okay, to this idea that learning should be about the construction of knowledge and that they should be allowed to choose what they want to learn about. Okay, this idea of a hyper-connected sense of learning. And it turns out if you put eye motion tracking software on medical students and have them read, let's say, a chapter from Up to Date, okay, but you give it to them as text, their eyes naturally scroll from left to right, but then scan the margin of the page on the far right side. And that's kind of interesting, right? Because there's nothing over there. It's blank. But it turns out it's because they have been conditioned to look for links on the right-hand side of the page, because most of their reading is done on the internet, right? They also will scan certain words, and they seem to focus on things that are underlined, right? But it's not because they're interested in the word. It's because they think that they can hyperconnect to it. They can click on it, and it takes them to something else. And if you give them printed material only, they get very frustrated because they cannot go anywhere else. They're stuck where they are, right? And so what we have found is that at least in US medical students, the learners, if you let them go on the internet and say, you should read about acute appendicitis, okay, we're going to talk about it tomorrow, okay? They come into class the next day and say, okay, did you read about acute appendicitis? And they're like, yeah. I mean, I started reading about acute appendicitis, but then I started reading about, right lower quadrant pain in general. And then I started reading about abdominal pain. And then and it just goes on and on and on, right? So they end up knowing a lot about a lot of different things. But their level of knowledge in each of them is very superficial. They do not have deep knowledge about any one topic, right? So their learning gaps become huge, which is why us as the teachers, our job is to show them the gaps, okay? So that they know what they need to read more about, okay? So instead of sage on a stage, it's called guide by the side, right? Our job now is a coach. Our job is as a mentor, right? And help the learners see what they don't know. Does that make sense? Okay, so the next thing then is if you believe all this, right, and you want to use education technologies, it's overwhelming, okay? There is a new education app literally every day, right, that's created. And so what I do is I give you a framework to kind of think about it, okay? So show of hands, how many of you guys are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy? Sounds familiar. Okay, perfect. Good. Okay. So as you know, very beginner, right? I'm sorry, not beginner. Very level or low level is remembering, right? The very high level is creation. Okay. So if you take education technologies, you can classify them into three categories. There's the education technologies that replace what we currently do, one for one, okay, replacement. There are the education technologies that amplify. In other words, they let you do things that are slightly better than what you could do without the education. If somebody comes to you and says, oh, I have this new app, you got to see this, we got to buy this for the students, right? It's wonderful, okay? You should ask them, does it replace what we're doing? Does it amplify what we're doing? Or does it transform? If the answer is, well, it just replaces what we're doing, the next question you should ask is, how much money does it cost? Right? Because if it's very expensive, it may not be worth it, right? And maybe the traditional techniques are just fine. So let me give you an example. Is that some of these, right, like iMovie, it's pretty easy to use, but they're not cheap, right? I mean, you have to either have a MacBook or Mac, or you'd have to buy it extra, okay? And then there are some that are like amazing. Like you could be a professional movie person, right, in order to use it. So they're very expensive, but very high quality, okay? The key, though, is remember, for your students, you do not have to be Steven Spielberg, right? You are not trying to make a movie that's winning an Academy Award, right? You are just trying to make a movie to help them understand whatever it is the lecture was, okay? Now, second one, how about PowerPoints? I'm sure everybody here probably uses PowerPoints or Keynote or what have you, okay? So the key here with this one is Myers multimedia theory, okay? And it's the same for the videos, okay? The idea is that the words and the pictures have to align. Okay, now this is actually a bad example of it because it's kind of a busy slide, okay? But the point is, right, is that people learn best when you're teaching, let's say with PowerPoint, if the pictures match whatever it is you're trying to say. Does that make sense? Okay, it becomes a little bit jarring for them if what I'm talking about doesn't match, doesn't align. Okay, people get a little bit confused. And you see this happen in meetings all the time, right? Where they put up a lot of words and then they start talking and people get lost in the slide. Okay. If you want access to good images, do you guys already know how to use Creative Commons? Some of you? Show of hands, you do not know how to use it. Some of you. Okay. Let me show you then. Okay. So if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to make this like an active demo. Okay. So I'm going to go in and out of PowerPoint so that you guys can see what we're talking about here. Okay. So I give you three options to download pictures from the internet into your PowerPoint presentations. Okay. The reason these are important is that if your PowerPoint ends up getting shown, say, in Thailand, or gets shown in other countries, if the image is copyrighted, you could get into trouble, right? Because you don't have permission to use the picture, okay? So instead, right, I give you three sources of pictures that have no copyright restrictions, okay? So let me show you how it works. Okay, so let's say you want a picture, you're doing a PowerPoint teaching about central line placement, okay? So you type into Google, central line simulator, okay? You then click images, okay? This now shows you all these pictures, wonderful pictures of central line simulators, okay? But again, some of them are copyrighted, okay? But it's hard to tell. So what you do, you go to Tools, okay? Then you click Usage Rights, okay? And you see right here, the second option, Creative Commons License, okay? You click that. Now you see all the ones. See a little, it says licensable, okay? So that means now these pictures can be used for education purposes only. Okay, so as long as you're using this for teaching, no fee, totally free. Okay, now let's say you're like, well, that's nice and all, but I'm looking for like something prettier, right? Like I want something really, you know, nice, inspirational, beautiful picture, like tropical island or something like that, okay, for your picture. Then you go to Pixabay. Okay, Pixabay is run by people who feel that it is our natural right to have access to beautiful pictures for presentations. Okay, so you go to Pixabay and you type in tropical island. $62,184 free images of tropical islands. Okay, so I don't care how picky you are, you should be able to find something here for your presentation. Okay, and remember, a lot of times using Myers multimedia theory, we may show just the picture and then talk about it, right? In other words, hardly any words on the slides, just more about the picture. Okay, now let's say you don't want a beautiful picture, you want to make a point with an image. Okay, this is called the Noun Project. Okay, now this one is free and you get some basic images, and if you want to pay a little bit of money, it's about $10 a year, okay, 10 US dollars a year, you get access to all of them. okay? But this is a nice one to use, for example, you want to do like medical student, okay? Because you don't want like an actual medical student in the presentation, right? So instead you type in medical student and you get something like this, okay? And you see these in presentations all over the world, okay? Very nice, easy ones to use. They look cute, you know, it works well. Okay, questions on PowerPoint images? No, okay, great. All right, let's go back. Okay, now let's say you want something a little bit more around assessment. Okay, so we talked about instruction replacement. Let's talk about assessment replacement. So show of hands, how many people use question banks in their teaching? Anybody? Just one. Okay. So the idea here is that you can use, and I'll show you in a little bit, you can use applications like ChatGPT to create multiple choice questions. Okay. The problem is somebody has to go through them all and make sure that they're actually correct. Okay. So instead, what you could do is sign up for question banks. The advantage of question banks is all the questions you know are already correct, along with the answers. Okay. And it allows you to track the learners. Okay, so these integrate into a learning management system. So you can assign, let's say, all your residents, right, questions from TrueLearn, okay, over here, right, on the bottom corner. And as the program director, I can now see how often the residents click on the questions, how many of them they get it right, how many are getting it wrong, and how many questions they do, right? And the ones who don't do the questions, I can send angry emails to and remind them to do the questions. Okay. The advantage of this is that it basically allows you to kind of track their learning. Okay. The disadvantage is you're always going to have some students who don't do it. Right. And it gets kind of expensive in that case. Okay. So you might want to think about how you're going to justify the cost of this. Okay. In other words, if you're going to buy it, maybe buy it for the whole group. Right. And make sure a lot of people are using it, type of thing. Does that make sense? Okay. The other new versions of these question banks, like the New England Journal of Medicine Knowledge Plus one, it features adaptive learning. So one of the downsides of using question banks is sometimes the students memorize the questions and the answers, right? And so basically they see the question, they immediately know the answer is C, but you ask them why, no idea. They just memorized it. Okay. Adaptive learning question banks change the answer and the question stem slightly, right? So it's truly measuring, do they understand the concept, not do they recognize the question. Okay. All right. So we talked about that. Some other positives of question banks: it does shift learning to outside the work hours, and then it does really embody these neuroscience of learning principles, specifically testing effect and retrieval, okay, practice. And the downside, again, is that it is sometimes about memorization, and the quality of the questions, some of them still need to be double checked, and it can be expensive, as we talked about. Okay, next one. Anybody use animated videos? Someone? Perfect, great. Okay, why do you like to use them?
It make fun for students, and it can we can do attraction, and then it's I think animated video can make sense, and we can the real video like the human. Sometimes it's a copyright, so I think it's better.
Exactly. Those are all, I think, wonderful reasons. So how we got involved in this is, and I give you just a couple examples of ones you want to think about doing. We had a faculty who wanted to create a series of videos on airplane medical emergencies. right? So I don't know if you've ever, been on an airplane. They say, is there a doctor on board or a nurse on board? And now you got to go see the patient, and it's a very limited setting, right, in terms of what's available, okay? And so he really wanted to teach the residents how to manage these situations. But then you think about it, you got to buy uniforms for the actors to look like they work on a plane, like the flight attendant. You have to build a plane, a set, to make it so you can film it. It's very expensive, So instead, we use animated video, right? Because now you have the whole set, the actors, everything that she mentioned, right, is all included. Very easy to do, okay? And it's fun. It's a little bit less stress. They kind of look cartoony, so it's a little bit less stressful for a serious topic, okay? So if you guys are interested in doing this, I give you a couple of different choices here. The one I would recommend you look at first is called Powtoon, okay, which is over here on the side. This is the one we currently are using for all of our patient education videos. So in the United States, at least, we have to compete pretty heavily for patients. So we like to put these on our website. And that way the patient can click on it like, what to know about thyroid disease. And they click on it. And again, it's kind of a fun way for the patient to learn. Okay. Now, if you're going to use, say, Powtoons, which I would argue is the easiest one of all of these to learn how to use, you need about a week to figure out how to use it. Okay, so instead of every single person in your group learning how to use it, I recommend one person learn how to use it, and they just do all the Powtoons for everybody, right? And you give them that like special title and special role, okay? Because again, it's not worth everybody's time to learn how to do it. Questions on animated videos? Okay. Now, let's say you want to take it up a notch. Okay, now we want to amplify, okay? And specifically, we're looking at the in-class part of the flipped classroom model, all right? So some of you may be like me, right? You may have a situation where there is no, like if you work with residents, for example, there's not a lot of time where they're actually sitting in a classroom, okay? In medical students, sure, you have dedicated didactic time. The residents are much harder to get a hold of, right? Because they're busy. They're doing all sorts of patient care stuff, etc. Okay. So one idea, right, is you could do videos like we talked about earlier. But what resident has the time to sit through a 60-minute didactic on a topic, right? And you see what ends up happening is the resident speeds up the video to try to, get the whole video in quickly. And so the instructor sounds like a chipmunk as they're talking very, very fast, okay? So instead, we have gone to concept videos. Concept videos are explainer videos. They're originally created by corporations as like explainer videos. So they take a very complex topic and they break it up into very discrete chunks of knowledge. Okay. The average concept video, the longest one, is 20 minutes. Okay. So you're really going for very high yield teaching, okay, in a very short amount of time. It's perfect for residents, okay, or attendings. Okay, really, really good way to learn. Okay, and I give you an example here. So I run a lumps and bumps clinic. Okay, so we remove soft tissue masses, drain abscesses, do lymph node biopsies, temporal artery biopsies, all this stuff under local anesthesia. Okay, so the patient is awake. Okay, and we do it in a procedure room with very limited equipment. Okay, I have a resident that's with me every single week. Okay, and it's a new resident every month. So what I used to do is I would meet with them, the first one, and do an orientation, and then they're with me, for a couple patients, and then they go on their own. And they would have their own patients, and I have my own patients. Okay, but we're operating side by side, in the rooms are next to each other. Okay, so one clinic, we probably see about 30 patients. All right, so it has to move quickly, okay, through all this. But if I'm doing this every single month as the teacher, it gets exhausting, right? I mean, you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again every month. So instead, I started doing concept videos and embedding them in a PowerPoint. Okay. So what I do is I basically film the video using my phone. I put the video in the PowerPoint, and then I email it to them the week before the clinic. Okay, and I say, looking forward to working with you next week. Make sure you go through all these videos, and then we'll talk about it the first day. Okay, so now all that stuff I used to say and take like an hour to do is done beforehand. So when they show up, I just do a quick orientation, and they get started right away. Okay, so I give you an example. Here's one of the concept videos. This is the lumps and bumps ultrasound machine. As you can see, there are brakes at the bottom of the machine. If you need to move it, simply release the lever on all the wheels, and then you can pull the machine like so. To use the machine, simply take the jelly. Okay, now some of you are thinking, why is he starting with the brakes? Okay, and the reason is because when I first filmed this, I started with the probe. Okay, and then a resident tried to move the machine, didn't know how to release the brake, and they broke the brake. Okay, which cost me $200 now to fix the brake. Okay, so it's okay, right? Because these are concept videos, because I did not spend a lot of time filming it and editing it like a normal didactic video, I just refilmed it. Took 5 minutes. Right? So that's the beauty of concept videos, right? Very quick, very easy, very discrete, small chunk of knowledge. Okay, and obviously very nice for skills. Okay, because you're literally showing them how to do it. Okay, and you can see here, and we won't go through all of them. So this is the machine, okay, video over there. This one here shows what's in each of these drawers. It just quickly goes through every single drawer and then what's inside the cabinets in case they need to find equipment. Okay, and then this one I added recently is the smelling salts. Okay, because it turns out when a patient passes out, the residents didn't know how to revive them. So if a patient gets overly stressed, which doesn't happen very often, but maybe once a year, somebody passes out, right? And so I realized you have to film a video to show them where the smelling salts are to revive the patient and know that they have to stop the procedure in order to do that. Okay, does that make sense? Questions on concept videos? Okay. All right. Other ways, if you don't want to use your phone, I give you again a couple options of things to use. Zoom is obviously nice because you could add yourself to the PowerPoint video itself, along with Loom. Loom is another one that you can do that with. The subscription fees are usually very low if you only do one at a time. If you want to do a lot of them, you're gonna have to pay a lot of money. But again, just something to think about. And then I give you some other ones there for you. Okay, now let's get to the exciting one. Okay, so let's say you want to do something completely different. Okay, you really want to elevate what you're doing. Okay, so for skills, so a show of hands, how many of you guys are using either virtual reality or augmented reality? Really? No, right? Because the reason, right, is, obviously when they first came out, these were like $2,000 a piece. Okay, now on Amazon, it's about $299, $300. Okay, that's still a lot of money. Okay, and the problem is that people will steal it, right? And so you have to be very, very careful when you give it to people because you have to collect it back again. Okay, and it's really challenging. Okay, so instead, what they created was Google Cardboard. Have you guys seen this? Ready? Okay, this is $5, $5 US. Okay, so what you do is it comes flat in the mail. Okay, and the learner puts their phone into the front of it. Okay, do you mind just pass it around? You can see. They put their phone in the front, and then they turn on the VR app. Okay, that you give them, right? And now it turns their phone into a virtual reality device for $5 US. Okay, plus it's their phone, so they probably won't steal it. Okay, so just something to think about, right, in case you want to try virtual reality for your teaching. Okay. Now, things that are good for virtual reality teaching would be things that are like complex concepts that are difficult to understand otherwise. Okay. So for example, retroperitoneal anatomy. Okay. It's hard for the learner to get it. Okay. Unless you really like inguinal hernia anatomy, for example. Okay. But you could imagine if you had an anatomy app that allows them to zoom in and out of layers, it might be easier for them to understand. Okay. Another way to use it, situations that may be kind of stressful for first-time learners. Okay. And for us, it's coming into the operating room for the first time. Some of our medical students get so anxious about possibly contaminating something, they pass out. Okay. So instead, we now do it the first time, virtual reality. That way they walk into the operating room, okay, but they're sitting. So if they pass out, they just pass out in the chair, okay? And that way they can look around and see everything and feel what it feels like. And then we bring them into the actual one. Okay? Questions on VR?
Yeah. The cardboard that just only one person VR, right? The VR technology can be in the group in the class, right?
Right.
But this one is only one.
Right. So every learner would have to have their phone in one of these cardboard devices, and then you would have to walk them through it if you want to do it as a group exercise. Otherwise, you just tell them what to do and have them do it at home. So they basically check one of these things out, and then they bring it back later. Okay. Generally, we need to buy these once every 2 years. It's cardboard, so I mean, it's not great, and we obviously tell them to avoid water with it. Okay. Next one. Audience response system. So let's say you want to do something with assessment a little bit fancier, right, than just raising your hand. Okay. There's nothing wrong with asking people to raise their hand. Okay. But as you guys know, some people are kind of shy when it comes to raising their hand, right? And they don't want to be recognized. Okay. So instead, what you could do is think about an audience response system. All right. Anybody already used one? They've already used, okay. So there's clickers, right? So this is like a little device you hand out to everybody. The problem with clickers, as you guys know, is that people always forget to turn it off. So the batteries drain out, okay? And so people spend a fortune on batteries with these clickers, okay? Or people steal it. I don't know why, but sometimes people just take it, okay? So people have now switched to using phone-based polling technologies, right? You guys may see this as Slido, Metaslide, Poll Everywhere, Poll Daddy, all these things, right? And again, it's great as long as people have cell phone signal. Okay, but you can imagine if you're in an auditorium, it's kind of in the ground, it's deeper, or big auditorium, they may not be able to access their phone, in which case they can't do it. Okay. So I give you another option, okay, and it's called Plickers. Okay, so all of you should have a Plickers card in front of you, okay? And there's basically a number, okay, on the top of the card. Every one of you has a new number, okay, or unique number. So if I wanted to, I could assign the number to you, right? And that way track your learning each time we do this. Okay, so how it might work, for example, is I might laminate the card in plastic or put it on cardboard. Okay, every time we get together, you get your number back again. Okay, and then we do a test. Okay, and that way I can track your score. Another way you might want to use it, right, is for needs assessment. So you have a lot of things to teach about in a didactic, let's say. Okay, you want to know what to focus on. Maybe you have 5 questions in the beginning. Okay, you ask the audience. If they get the question right, you know you don't have to spend that much time on it. Okay, you can move on to the next question. Does that make sense? Okay, so in the card, you'll see whatever letter is facing at the top of your card, that's the answer choice that you are trying to do. Okay, and it's basically using optical character recognition technology from my phone. Okay, so for example, the way this card is oriented, I would ask you a question and you're saying to me the answer is B. Okay? If I turn it, I would say the answer is A. Okay? If I flip it around, I'm saying the answer is D. And if I turn it the other way, I'm saying the answer is C. Does that make sense? All right, let me give you guys a chance to practice and you can see, okay? Here we go, okay? What is the airspeed velocity of a coconut-laden swallow? So a bird carrying a coconut, okay? A, 35 miles an hour, B, 37 miles an hour, C, 40 miles an hour, or D, African or European, okay? So what I do is I've turned the Plickers app on my phone on, okay? I hit start, okay? And now you show me what you think the answer is, okay? You hold it over your head, okay? And all I do is I walk around the room. Hold on a second. Okay? And what it does is that as you there we go. As you answer, it's showing me a number. Okay? It shows me yours is folded. Can you hold it up? Okay, thanks. It shows me what you're triggering as the answer, okay? And your card number. Hey, Pear. Wonderful to see you. Pear was one of our education research fellows many years ago. All right. Okay. You have an answer? You don't have a card. Okay. Okay. I have 20 answers. Okay. Now, just to be honest, normally it's darker on the paper. Okay. And so even in an auditorium, you just have to scan your phone pretty quickly. Okay. You don't have to walk around everything. Okay. Now, what I do then is I hit graph. Okay. Now, this is the free version. If this was the paid version, it would actually come up on the PowerPoint slide. So you would all see too, okay? But instead it's free version, so only I can see, okay? But here, I have a witness here, okay? So I'm not lying, okay? So what do you see here?
So the most answer the answer is African or European.
Yeah, how many people?
Six people.
Okay. So 6 people said African or European, okay? What does that mean? That means 6 of you understand this is a joke from Monty Python, The Search for the Holy Grail. Okay? But it means 14 of you have no idea what we're talking about, right? And in fact, 4 of you think 40 miles an hour, 5 of you think 37 miles an hour, and 5 of you think 35 miles an hour. So it's pretty even split. Okay? So if we were using this for teaching purposes, we now would talk about Monty Python and Search for the Holy Grail. Okay? Because we can now teach about it. Does that make sense? Okay? The reason we use this is because it's fun. Right? And as you guys know, when you give a lecture, people's attention starts to drift at about 20 minutes. That's why I do this exercise at the 20-minute mark, right? Because it suddenly activates you a little bit, right? And if you were dozing off, hopefully now you're paying attention again, okay? And kind of get focused again, okay? That's all, right? But it's a nice way of using technology as a little bit different than what you normally would, okay? If you want to do the paid version, not only will you get the chart to show up in your PowerPoint, you also can get a breakdown of your class. So, you know, like in this case, 3 was assigned to Charlie, right? 4 was assigned to David. And then you would see, if you click on David's name, how many questions David has been getting right every single time you've been doing this exercise. Okay, so you can also use it for remediation. Okay, now let's try something different. So let's say you want to do assessment, but you want to do something cool. You want to do something unique. Okay, so show of hands, how many of you are familiar with gamification? Oh, perfect. Good. You guys are going to like this, hopefully. Okay, so gamification is the application of game design elements into non-game contexts of teaching. Okay, and by game elements, I mean things like scoring, okay, colors, sounds, Okay, all of these things that make games fun. Okay, so why do we do this? Anybody know what game this is? This is harder, I think, for you guys because it was a US game. Well, I heard somebody say it. No, it's not Mario. I thought somebody said Oregon Trail. No? Did anybody say that? No, it's just wishful thinking. Okay. This is a game, okay, called the Oregon Trail. Okay. And in the US, kids played this starting in around 1988. Okay. When I show this slide at US meetings, everybody recognizes this game. Okay. But look at the graphics, right? Look how old this game is, right? But people still recognize it. That's the power of gamification, right? Is that people remember these things for long periods of time. The problem with gamification is that nobody remembers anything about the actual Oregon Trail. Like, where did it start? Where did it end? All people remember is that a whole bunch of people died on the Oregon Trail, right? And it was very difficult, right? And then as the player in the game, you constantly have to search for food or your entire party dies, right? That's all people remember about the game, okay? And so that's a problem. So I give you maybe an example here to try. So anybody use Kahoot? Oh, you all use Kahoot. Oh, great, perfect. Okay, so we don't have to spend much time on this. We'll just do a little bit then, okay? Just so you guys get a taste for it, okay? So Kahoot is the Norwegian word for aha, or eureka, or I got it, okay? And it's a Norwegian startup company. As you guys know, Norway has a lot of oil money, okay? They basically start giving out education grants. This company won a $30 million grant, okay, to create this company. And as you can see, it's currently free. I don't know how long it'll stay that way, but it uses neuroscience of learning principles of forced retrieval. But there is no spaced ed option. And again, it's all about gamification and competition. Okay, so let me give you a demo. Okay, so you would log in, okay, and as you can see here, the price is $3.99 per month, okay, for the US version, or you can do the free version too. The free version only lets you do one Kahoot, period. Okay, so you have to do the same one over and over again. For $3.99 a month or $48 a year, it looks like it gives you more premium content and probably a couple extra quizzes. Okay, or you can do the gold package for $13 a month, and now the player limit is up to 200, and you have unlimited Kahoots. Okay. The power of this is, I know I sound like a salesperson, but the power of this, right, is that it's institutional subscription. Right, so Siriraj Hospital could buy one subscription, right, and just share it among everybody. Okay, you don't have to. Everybody has to pay for their own. Okay, but at any rate, so what you would do is you log in. Okay, and it lets you start with somebody else's game. Okay, so give me a topic that you guys normally teach about. Anything. What is it? Give me a medical topic. Medical professionals, fine. Three. 3,900 Kahoots on this topic. Okay, so let's start with medical ethics. Oh wait, is this no, sorry. Medical ethics and professionalism. Okay, so you can see here the questions they came up with already. There's 10 of them. Okay, if you like it, you download it into your account. Okay, once you download it, you can edit it, change the questions, change the answers, do whatever you want. Okay, you don't like it, go find another one. Okay, but again, the beauty of this is you keep building off of what somebody else has already done, which saves you time. Okay, now if you wanted to, certainly you could put your own questions in there, right, and start over. Okay, no problem. All right, but your choice. But I want to give you guys a chance to kind of experience this. So let's do. Oh, by the way, I do not recommend you guys do active demoing to teach. There's a lot of risks doing it this way. Again, I do it this way because I think it's the best way for you guys to see how to do all this. But I'm not saying to actually do this at your own home institution. Okay, you need a very patient audience while you do this. Okay, so my Wi-Fi looks like is still on. It's just thinking. Hmm. No, that's a shame. Let's see here. Maybe too many people are on the Wi-Fi. Yeah, I think I'm on the Siriraj Wi-Fi. Maybe I switched to my own phone. Oh, got progress. There we go. All right. See if this works. Okay, so let's say, okay, pretend you guys are all medical students, okay, at Harvard, okay, and I'm going to give you a didactic on hyperparathyroidism, right? Because again, that's what I'm an endocrine surgeon. That's what I teach. Okay, so we're going to talk about hyperparathyroidism. Okay, so what I do then, okay, we can do this in Zoom, okay, or Teams, right? So it could be virtual, or we can do it in person. Okay, either way. Okay, but I want to know what topics to cover with you. Okay, so I start off with a Kahoot to use as a needs assessment. Okay, so I load up, okay, a Kahoot on parathyroid disease. Okay, and just so you guys can see, there's different modes you can choose. Okay, so there's classic mode where everybody competes against everybody else. There's team mode, and I don't know what the other modes are. I've never tried the other ones, but you guys should try and give it a sense. Okay, but the bottom line is to go ahead and start. And now everybody who wants to play, okay, you take out your phone or your iPad, whatever has a camera, okay, and you're going to take a picture, okay, of the QR code that comes up. Or you could just go to www.kahoot.it, okay? And then if this thing ever goes, hopefully the pin will come up here soon. Now, the reason there's a pin is that you guys have probably heard of Zoom bombing, right? Where people hack into Zoom accounts for some reason to go to meetings that they weren't invited to. People do Kahoot bombing and join Kahoots that they were not invited to. So that's why there is a pin number here, okay? So hopefully this loads at some point. And what you guys will see then is you get an option to put in your name. Okay, it's very interesting, right? So they have a filter in the game that basically prevents people from putting any words that are considered profanity in over 18 different languages. Okay, because again, all the names are shown on the screen. Okay, so the students can't get clever and try and put something profane up here. Okay, here we go. All right, so go ahead and type in that PIN number or take a picture of the QR code. Hopefully you guys can get in. Okay, Jay's in, vote. Perfect learner. Very nice. All right, anybody having problems getting in? Okay. And you can also just go to kahoot.it if you want, the website. You got in? Good. The pin is 848985. All right, everybody in? Okay, so what we do now, right, is I lock it out, okay, again, to prevent Kahoot bombing, okay? So I'm going to hit lock, and then we hit start. All right. So the question was, the main problem caused by hyperparathyroidism is, okay, 7 of you, okay, were correct. It's hypercalcemia, okay? 9 of you were testing the system, okay, and seeing if it was correct or not, okay, which is fine, okay? The point is, right, is that then I could say show media, and it would then launch a little video, okay, or a picture or something, okay, maybe an anatomy diagram, okay, who knows, whatever you want, okay, that would then show the teaching point, okay? Then we move on to the next question, okay? Who wants to do another question? Not many people, right? But let me show you this. Okay, so who's Boat? Boat is winning at 912, right? Because I didn't tell you that your score is based on your reaction time. So the faster you get the question right, the more points you get. Now who wants to try again? More people, right? That's the power of gamification. It's a little bit addictive, right? Is that, again, it's that game feeling of playing, of having points, of scoring. You know, you're not going to get anything. I mean, there's no prize, right? But you kind of feel like you want to win, right? Especially surgeons, okay? We're very competitive people, okay? So the bottom line, right, is that if you want to think about doing this, it's kind of a nice way to help people activate and learn, right? And especially engage, okay? The downside with gamification is that the kind of hidden curriculum is that some people take away the message that, you know, number one, the faster you answer the question, the better. And that's not always true, right? Because sometimes you should think about things before you answer them, okay? Number two, there's only 4 choices, right? Obviously, you got to set this up ahead of time, and the questions are in English, right? So obviously, if English is not the first language, you're going to have to translate or do something else, okay? And the last issue with gamification is that there is a subtext or a feeling that what I'm teaching you is so boring, the only way I think you would like it is if I gamify it, right? And you want to be careful about that, okay? And make sure you're not sending that message. Okay, questions on gamification? All right, next one. Virtual didactics. How many of you teach virtually? Zoom, Teams? Any of you? Okay, great, about half of you. All right, great. So what do you think of it? You like it? You don't like it? Why?
Because I cannot see the real reaction. Oh, maybe you can show your the student face, but I cannot get another reaction more
Yeah.
than face.
Exactly, right? This is a fantasy. It never looks like this, right? It looks like this. right? You have all these black screens. You have no idea what's going on, okay? You have one person who's doing like their wellness activity up here on the left, right? And then you have one student who's like oddly like over engaged, you know, and just a little creepy, okay? So, you know, this is the problem with virtual teaching is you don't know, are they really paying attention, okay? Or are you just talking to an empty room, okay? So one option is to start looking at the engagement features of Zoom and Teams, okay? So for example, for Zoom, I use the annotate feature a lot, okay? Just anybody also do this? Okay, so what you do, right, like let's say I'm teaching about thyroid nodules, okay? So I'll put up a picture of an ultrasound of a thyroid nodule, okay? And you know, it's classic, right? Everybody see the thyroid nodule and you know, everybody's like nodding, right? But it's black screen, so who knows, okay? So what I do is I say, okay, everybody, click on your annotate feature and put your initials in the middle of the thyroid nodule. Now it gets interesting, right? Because now you're forcing everybody to take a stand, right? And show you, do they really understand where the thyroid nodule is? Or do most of them actually think it's the carotid artery, right? And again, that's where we teach the anatomy, okay? So these are things to just kind of think about as ways to pull everybody back in again. Okay, simulation, right? Show of hands, how many of you guys use simulation? Probably what most do, yeah, okay. So again, as you guys know, it's a teaching method, okay, first and foremost. It can be used for assessment, okay, but it's primarily set up as a teaching method. And the idea is for people to practice, okay, as opposed to do high stakes exams, okay, more for practice. Now, as you guys may know, you know, there's all different levels of simulation, right? So you can start off with just basic paper simulations, all the way up to task trainers to fully immersive, okay? And I give you just some examples here real quick. So for example, we did a study, right, where our interns, you know, they basically would start off the year and we have what's called a night float system. Okay, so one intern would be taking care of maybe 50 patients at night, okay, that they don't know them, okay? So they have to get sign out and then they go take care of these patients. And one of the major issues we found is that the interns didn't know how to prioritize issues, right? Because the nurses are just calling them about all sorts of things, right? So it was very hard for them to know what needs to be seen first and what could be seen later. Okay, so we did a paper simulation. Okay, all we did was we created 10 scenarios and basically asked the intern to rank which patients they would see first, that's number 1, and then which patient they would see last, number 10, and then fill in the rest. Okay, we then asked the attending surgeons to do the same exact thing. What order would you want the interns to see your patients? Okay, then we meet with the interns in the very first week of residency and we show them the results. Okay, and basically, as you can see here, it's a little bit hard to project, okay? But basically, in the beginning, there is a lot of similarities, right? Between the average first patient, second patient, third patient. But you can see when you go to 3, there is suddenly a very wide gap that's formed in some of the interns, not all of them, just some of them. The range has suddenly increased, okay? So now we have a discussion, okay, about why that patient should be seen third, okay, and what's the problem, right? And then we ask them to re-rank at the end just to make sure everybody understands the learning points, okay? So it's just a very easy paper simulation. Again, there's no sim center, there's nothing, right? It's just paper scenarios to help the residents understand what we're trying to teach. Okay, let's say you want to do a little bit more advanced, right? So you do a task trainer, right? You guys, I think, probably have tons of these, okay? But, you know, let's say you're teaching suturing, right? You got your standard suture pad, right? And they learn how to suture, okay? But if you want to make this a little bit more complicated, you take the suture pad, you stick a Velcro strap underneath it, and you tie it onto a patient, okay, or an actor. Okay, now you tell them, okay, you got to sew up this laceration, while talking to the patient, right? And the actor is trained to basically ask questions, right? Like, what are you doing? Or, ow, that hurts. You know, can you give me more anesthetic? How long you been doing this? Is it supposed to look like that? Right? All the questions that residents normally get asked while they're trying to work. Okay, but this lets them kind of, again, gets a little bit more complicated, right? Because now they got to practice a skill and communicate at the same time. Right? Immersive simulation. So at Mass General, we used to have these old operating rooms. Maybe you guys have the same. It has a viewing window. So the attending surgeons would sit here and then yell at the residents down here as they're operating, okay, through a microphone, okay? So what we did was when we were renovating the operating rooms, we took this area here and made it into our simulation control area. And then this area down here is all simulated operating room. So it looks like an operating room, but all the equipment is not sterile, right? It's just for simulation purposes. But it's arranged exactly like a real operating. Okay, so what we would do is we would put teams of 6, 2 anesthesia residents, or an anesthesia resident, a CRNA, 2 surgery residents, 1 junior, 1 senior, and then 2 nurses, 1 scrub tech, 1 circulator nurse. And we would run them through difficult scenarios that they might encounter in the operating room. Okay, and because we are observing them through one-way glass, if the team is doing well, you know, it's fine, right? It's okay, but let's make it a little bit more complicated, right? Maybe we increase the rate of bleeding. Maybe some of the equipment they're asking for is not available, okay? Pear helped us with all these different simulations, okay? And you can see at the end, what it allows you to do is practice teamwork, right? In a way that would be impossible any other way, okay? Except in real scenario, right? In real life in the operating. But obviously, if you were the patient, you would hope that your team that's operating on you, the first time they encounter massive hemorrhage is not on you, right? Or anaphylactic shock, right? You would hope they have practiced this as a team at least once before. Okay, they do in real life. That's the concept. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Any questions on simulation before we move on? All right, so here's the one I think that's the most difficult to teach about, because artificial intelligence is literally changing every day, okay? What we know about it and what we understand about it, okay? But I'm going to show you my personal take on it and see what you guys think. I'd be, love to learn how you guys are also using it, okay? But artificial intelligence is basically computer science techniques that mimic human intelligence. Okay, and again, nowadays, the way we're most talking about it is so-called neural networking. Okay, the problem is, as you guys know, in Hollywood, artificial intelligence never goes well for humans. Okay, the artificial intelligence becomes sentient and it basically kills all the humans. Okay, every single Hollywood movie ends badly for the people. Okay, it never works out well for us. Okay, and the reason I think is because we have a fear of what we don't understand. Okay, so the medical societies would argue we as physicians need to understand artificial intelligence at its core, to the point where they're now making it a core competency. Okay, so these are the 6 core competencies that they believe all physicians should understand about artificial intelligence. Okay, I'm sorry, I said physician, I should say healthcare professionals. So physicians, nurses, anybody who's involved in healthcare education. Okay, and that's basic knowledge of the AI, social and ethical implications, AI-enhanced clinical encounters, evidence-based evaluation of AI tools, workflow analysis, and practice-based learning. Okay, so essentially took the 6 core competencies for the ACGME resident training and modified it, okay, for artificial intelligence. But what does that really look like as a healthcare professional educator? So there is predictive AI, Okay, predictive AI, right, is the idea, it's kind of like weather forecasting, right? It's the idea, can the AI predict which patients are going to have complications, right? Or which patients need more testing or screening. Okay? We as educators, though, are much more interested in generative AI. Okay, and generative AI is all about creating content, specifically education content. Okay, now that's not to say predictive AI is not interesting. Okay, like you know, you guys may have seen this article. They took an AI algorithm, they taught it organic chemistry, microbiology, all the things that you would have to learn for drug discovery. They then asked the algorithm to create 150 novel compounds that may have antimicrobial properties that we have not tried before. 150, okay? So just to give perspective, it takes the average pharmaceutical lab 5 years to come up with one, okay? In 30 minutes, this AI came up with 150. Okay, so far, 50 of them have been tested, and 40 of them have antimicrobial properties. Right? So again, amazing possibilities, not as helpful for us as educators, but certainly interesting. Okay, so that just gives you an example of the difference between predictive AI and generative AI. Okay, now let's talk more about generative AI because again, I think it's more relevant to us as educators. So first one is large language models. Show of hands, how many of you guys are currently using them? Good. I would think is almost everybody at this point is probably using it, okay? All it is this idea, it's a probability language model, okay? Where it's basically using mathematical equations to guess what the next word should be in a sentence, okay? And it's trained then by basically being told is it correct or incorrect, okay? To then learn and improve its chances of guessing the next word. Okay, and as you can see here, you know, there's Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT. Copilot is just ChatGPT with Microsoft, okay? I'm going to show you ChatGPT just because this is the one that's installed on my computer. It's not to say it's better than any of the other ones, okay? But I just want to show you this one, okay? Now, ChatGPT has created numerous versions, right? So ChatGPT 1 came out in 2018, okay? At that time, it was basically had a 117 million parameter count. What that means is that when it's trying to guess the next word, at any given time, it can hold 117 million possibilities for that second word. Okay, and it was trained using the book corpus. Okay, anybody familiar with this? So this is a very controversial program, it turns out. So what happened was back in the 1990s, Google offered libraries all over the United States a chance to have all of their old books scanned for free and turned into electronic copies that they would give back to the library. And the idea from the library side is this is great, right? We don't have to care for all these books anymore. We can just convert it to electronics, especially for all these books that are falling apart. What they didn't tell the libraries is that Google was keeping a copy of all of them. And so over time, they created a library of 7,000 books that previously were unavailable on the internet. And they then used those books to train GPT-1. Okay? So then GPT-2 comes out 1 year later. In 1 year time, it went from 117 million parameter count to 1.5 billion parameter count. Okay? And this time, it was trained on parts of the internet. Okay? Unfortunately, it was Reddit. Okay? Which, if you guys are familiar with Reddit, it's not like exactly the world's leading authority of knowledge. Okay? But that's what they had available to them. Okay? Then, 1 year later, ChatGPT 3 comes out. Now it's 175 billion parameter count. Just, I mean, look at this, 1 year time. 117 million to 1.5 billion to 175 billion, right? This is like logarithmic escalation, right? And now it is trained on most of the internet. Okay, basically anything it can get its hands on, okay, probably it's learning from. Okay, now we have ChatGPT 3.5 and now 4. 4 is the newest one. Okay, the problem here is that we actually do not know if this parameter count is correct or not. The thought is it's actually over 2 trillion. Okay, parameter count. And we have no idea what it's learning from. We think it's learning from the entire internet. Okay, we're not exactly sure. All right, but that's what the thought is. Okay, and I just want to give you guys a sense, right? This shows you all the other large language models that are out there. Okay, and this is as of last month. Okay, and you can see it just gets more and more and more, right? More and more available. Okay, and if you guys are interested in giving a try, publishing companies have started using them. Okay, so for example, Open Evidence is a partnership with New England Journal of Medicine and Elsevier. Unfortunately, it's not available in Thailand just yet. Okay, but basically, they trained a large language model with all of the articles in Elsevier and New England Journal of Medicine. And you can now query clinical questions, and it not only answers the question, it gives you the reference article that it's citing from. Okay, same with Quora. Quora is from the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. Okay, so there's a US thoracic surgery group. They put all their articles in it, and now you can query it. Okay, I give you here example just for Notebook LM. It's up to you guys who want to try it. This is Google's version. It's free. What's interesting about this one is you train your own large language model. Okay, so they give you the architecture, and then you put whatever articles you want into it, up to 50, okay, because it's free. You put 50 articles into it, and you can ask any questions you want about those 50 articles, and it gives you an answer back, right? So pretty interesting, right? Just as a physician, right, it's interesting, okay, because it now allows us to expand our knowledge, okay? But what about as an educator? So I'm going to give you here an example of ChatGPT demo, just, again, so you guys get a chance to see it, okay? As you guys know, it's all about what they call prompt engineering, okay? The prompt is the query that you're asking ChatGPT. In the prompt, you have to have the task. So in other words, what do you want it to do exactly, okay? The context, so the role that you want it to play. Whatever instruction you want about the format, okay, or the overall structure, and then you're just going to keep trying, okay, because the first time you typically do it, the prompt needs a little bit of modification, okay. So here's some examples, right? You basically say, acting as, a project manager, please create for me a cover letter, okay, shown as a plain text file or a PDF, and it generates it. Okay, does everybody understand? That's what it means for prompt engineering. Okay, so let me just show you here now an example. We'll do a demo. Okay. All right, so let's say I want to, let's see here. Nope, nope, there we go. Okay, let's say, so what's a common task, right, we have to do? We have to write, let's say, a recommendation letter for somebody, okay? I don't know about you guys. I get a lot of requests for people going up for promotion. It takes a couple hours, to really go through someone's CV and write a good letter, okay? So let's see what ChatGPT does, okay? So hold on a second here. Okay, can you guys hear me if I talk like this? Okay. So I am always very polite with ChatGPT, okay? You don't have to be, but I worry that someday it's going to take over, okay? So I wanted to know that I always treated it very well, okay? And only had the most respect for it, okay? But you guys can do whatever you want, okay? All right. Hello. I am the Vice Chair of Education for the MGH Department of Surgery. Actually, let's put a different for the Brigham and Women's Department of Surgery. I need to write a letter of recommendation for promotion to full professor for Dr. Roy Phitayakorn. Can you please help me if I give you the promotion criteria and his CV? Absolutely. I'd be glad to help you craft a strong and compelling letter of recommendation. Please upload or paste the following. Okay? I'm not doing anything. Okay, this is what it's saying. Okay? So I say, okay. So here, let's see here. Where's the full professor promotion criteria for Harvard Medical School? Here it is. Okay. Let's see here. Where is it here? Criteria. Okay. Okay. Copy. Here is the criteria. Okay. Here is the CV. Back here. Now I'm using my own CV because obviously I have permission for myself to use my CV, okay? Because I'm literally showing everybody here my CV, okay? And I upload. Okay, yeah. Now it's thinking. It says, what is his area of expertise? Because remember, we had to pick one, okay? So we say education. Is to proceed with the most tailored and persuasive letter of recommendation, I just need a final couple details. What is the audience of the letter and what tone? Thank you. The audience is the HMS Promotions Committee, and the tone should be formal academic tone. Thanks. Please proceed. Was there a writing? Oh, sorry. Oh, I see. It's down here. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Dear members of the promotion committee, it is with great enthusiasm and the highest level of professional respect that I write in strong support of Dr. Roy Phitayakorn's promotion to the rank of full professor of surgery at Harvard Medical School. Let's skip ahead here. Dr. Phitayakorn's career reflects a rare combination of academic rigor, educational leadership, and sustained impact. His scholarship in surgical education is not only prolific but influential, with numerous peer-reviewed publications, national precedents, and extramural grants focused on simulation-based education, emotional intelligence, curriculum design, and faculty development. His work on enhancing resident autonomy, non-technical skills training, and learner well-being has been adopted widely and cited as best practice in academic surgery. It is like my mother wrote this letter, right? But in seconds. Okay, so very, very powerful, very, very easy to use. But let's say you're not happy with the tone, right? You could ask it, right, to actually be more formal or be less formal. Okay, so again, huge time saver. Okay, now let's try something else. Let's say you're just gonna say, okay, so, all right, thanks. Let's try a different project. Okay, so let's say I am the surgery clerkship director, and I need to create 10 multiple choice questions about a book chapter that shows which question or which answer is correct and why. Can you please help me if I give you the chapter? Now, just to be honest with you, I've never actually had it say no. Okay, but I'm always polite and just ask, okay? So I say, okay, great. Okay, so here's the chapter. Okay, so what I did was I went to up to date, okay, and I just copied, okay, one of the chapters on the diagnosis and approach to the treatment of thyroid nodules in adults. Okay, so I drag it down here. Okay, hit upload. Okay, there we go. So that took like what, like 4 seconds? Okay, so let's start with the first question. What is the most common cause of a thyroid nodule in adult? A, thyroid lymphoma, B, benign colloid nodule, C, medullary thyroid carcinoma, or D, Graves' disease? Correct answer is B. Most thyroid nodules are benign, and colloid nodules represent the most common etiology among them. Not bad, right? Maybe kind of easy, right? But not bad. Okay, so what is the initial imaging modality of choice in the evaluation of a thyroid nodule? C, high resolution ultrasound. But look, the other choices are perfectly reasonable, right? And then it says why. In a patient with thyroid nodules, suppressed TSH, what is the next best step? Okay, A, radionuclide scan, also correct. Okay, so it has shifted my role as the educator. Instead of spending hours trying to write multiple choice questions with good distractors, okay, and then a clear answer, now I'm just checking ChatGPT, right? Maybe it takes 10 minutes to do 10 questions. Okay, I just copy it, right? Edit it, put it into Kahoot, go. Okay, so that's the power, right, of really thinking about how to use ChatGPT. And there's all these other ways to use it, but I just want to kind of give you guys a glimpse, right, of ways that this might be helpful to you. Okay, and some other ideas. Okay, you guys are familiar with Anki? Right, so Anki is a flashcard app. Okay, a lot of medical students use it to memorize things, right, on the flashcards. There is now Anki GPT. Okay, so Anki GPT, basically you take the entire up-to-date chapter, you upload it, and it creates flashcards from the book chapter. Right, so obviously way faster way of creating flashcards than sitting there manually doing it. Some of you, for example, who teach residents, right? You'll find that residents really like to learn auditory-wise because maybe they're stuck in traffic or they're commuting or whatever, right? They can't really look at something, but they can certainly listen to it. Okay. ChatGPT will now take book chapters and convert them into podcasts. Okay. It's hysterical. It's two fake hosts that do not exist sitting there talking to each other about thyroid nodules and the workup of it. Okay. So stuff like that is really just kind of an interesting way to kind of move and advance your teaching. Okay. Other things you could do with it. We talked about most of these. So I don't know about you guys, right? I get the student evaluations back. Okay. I have 150 evaluations to go through. Okay. And they have written comments about every single faculty or resident that they have worked with. Right. It takes forever to get through it. So instead, I upload the evaluation to ChatGPT and I ask it to summarize by institution. Okay, takes it about 10 seconds and it just gives me, I say, give me 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses of each institution. Done. Okay, or I say, summarize every evaluation for this faculty member. It goes through and only finds the one for that faculty member and gives me the readout. Okay, so saves just a tremendous amount of time. Some students are currently experimenting using it for generating differential diagnosis, so assist with clinical reasoning, and then helping with their write-ups, okay? Again, you just have to recognize that students are going to do this. So some attendings are like, oh, we need to create an AI detection software so that we can tell if the students are using it or not, right? That'll last like 4 days, right? Because the AI keeps improving and keeps changing. Right? So maybe you'll be able to tell at first, but then it'll evolve and get better. Okay. So rather than waste your time trying to keep up like this arms race, with AI, I think it's better to teach the students how to use it correctly. Okay. And really focus on that. Some people now are starting to use it for holistic review for residency. So they basically take the applicant's entire CV, resume, or application and ask the ChatGPT or whatever large language model they're using to summarize the strengths and weaknesses of the applicant. Also using it for job interviews. Okay, same thing. Coaching, right? So again, I don't know about you guys, at least in the surgery literature, coaching is very popular right now. Okay, the problem is coaches are very expensive. Right? So instead, what we've been doing is experimenting with having faculty load their evaluations and ask the large language model for coaching advice. Okay, it works surprisingly well. But again, there needs to be a human behind it, right? You can't just do a full artificial intelligence. Same with personalized instruction or assessment. Career exploration, we have not done anything with. I don't know if you guys have. So that kind of is where the coaching maybe is extending into this realm that maybe you should change careers. I don't know that's a great idea for the AI to start getting into. All of a sudden you have surgeons now, quitting or whatever, But it's just something to think about how to use it. And then we're also using it for a lot of our patient education materials, specifically marketing. ChatGPT is now on the latest version, can now make videos. And so you can now ask it to make promotional videos for your practice and see what it can come up with. So just some things to think about. Other things to maybe think about doing it for. So after you have a meeting with somebody, especially if it was a very complicated meeting, you have a lot of notes. If you want to summarize the meeting notes or even offer an email afterwards, thanking the person for meeting with you. We have some wealthy donors occasionally who like to give through our education program. I am not very good at writing thank you letters. My thank you letters are very short, but ChatGPT is very good at making them long and very flowery. So I give it my letter and it improves it significantly. Qualitative research, so grounded theory, it actually does a pretty good job with it. But again, somebody has to verify the code book. We already talked about letters of recommendation. Again, this is to draft letters of recommendation. You still need to go through it, right, and make sure it's not hallucinating. Certainly starting presentations. It gives you a great outline. If you know you have to give a talk on something, you can ask it for ideas, give it the literature that you want to talk on, and then ask it for an outline. Okay. The next version of these large language models will actually make the PowerPoint slides for you as well, but you have to pay for that. Social media posts, again, I don't know about you guys, but our department, they basically have to pay one person just to keep up with all of our social media for 138 surgeons. It turns out the large language models actually do a pretty good job, and they can just post very quickly. So something to think about there. And then curriculum development, again, is another area that I think is possibilities. The problem is it only knows what you upload into it. And so when you're trying to upload an entire curriculum, like on homeostasis 1, which is like all the first 3 semesters of medical school, it's a little bit unwieldy, and so you probably have to break it up a little bit. As far as take-home points, and I just want to make sure everybody understands this because I know people get excited about AI, but again, there is bias, and we don't really understand how it works. Okay, so no matter what anybody tells you, at the end of the day, if you submit something that the AI generated, you are responsible, right? You cannot blame ChatGPT for something that it wrote. Okay, it's just a tool. Right? So you're the one that gets into trouble. And what that means especially is around sharing patient data. Okay, so if you upload patient data into the ChatGPT because you want to practice differential diagnosis, you don't know what happens to that data. Right? Like, how do you know that it didn't upload it now into the internet, into the cloud? Right? It has a patient's name, date of birth, everything. Okay, so you got to be a little bit careful with it, right? Because again, we don't fully understand how it works. You need to make sure your hospital does not already have an AI usage policy. If it doesn't, you may want to write it because again, people are using this anyways. So you might as well start creating a policy that everybody can support and endorse, and that way the medical students especially know what is right and what is wrong when it comes to using AI. Choosing a vendor and then training is very, very important. So again, you could spend easily a whole week on just AI training, okay? But again, it's important to have a vendor that will support you or at least a faculty member who understands it well to teach it for you. And then at least in the United States, I don't know about Thailand, but there are a lot of government regulations coming down on this, okay? And they're constantly changing. So again, if it's anything that's going to be public, just be very careful, okay? So you don't get in trouble. And again, I think so for us, it's called HIPAA, right? Is the patient data, and FERPA is the student data. Okay, so again, it is clearly not compliant, okay, with either HIPAA or FERPA. Okay, so you can get into a lot of trouble if any student data or patient data gets onto the internet. Okay, it's also not for knowledge retrieval, right? So if you're just looking up facts, it's not what these large language models was created for. Right? It's to help you with language and create content. And finally, always assume it is biased. Okay? It's kind of like, the joke we were making at lunch, it's like your crazy uncle. Okay? Sometimes your uncle's right. Sometimes what he says is true. Sometimes what he says is absolutely crazy, okay, and totally false. Okay? You always have to think about that. All right? Don't just assume that it's true. Okay, deep breath. I think, what do we got? Oh, I might be a little bit over here. I apologize. So just real quick then, we're moving on. So if you guys are interested in learning more, okay, and again, this could easily be weeks of courses to talk about education technologies, but I strongly recommend you try to find an instructional designer, okay, and you may actually have one at your university and not realize it. So what I would do is in Google, type in the word instructional designer or blended learning and the name of your hospital or institution and see what comes up. Okay, probably you have one, you just don't realize it. They're almost always attached to universities. Okay, and their job is to take technology and help you convert it to practical education teaching. Okay, and then if you want to learn more on your own, this is a great website. It's called commonsense.org/education/edtech resources and reviews. Okay, and you can just take a picture of this slide if you want. But basically, this is like Yelp or some sort of crowdsourced review for education technologies. Okay, but the key to remember here is that the education tech keeps changing every day. Okay, so it's not about the specific app, it's about the category of the technology to use. Remember, most ed tech is tested in the kindergarten through 12th grade levels in the United States. So a lot of it you're going to find is not appropriate for medical students or residents, but you will find some that works quite well. And there's a filter on it for free. So it'll only show you the ones that are freely available. For those of you who are kind of thinking that you want to pursue education as part of your career moving forward, I strongly recommend you think about these 6 categories, okay? So these are considered the 6 roles for the future of medical education, okay? So in other words, if you want to get paid to do medical education, you probably should fit in one of these 6 roles or start gearing your career towards one of these 6 roles. So the first one is the master clinician, okay? This is the person who is on each service that is like the true expert at whatever clinical disease they're facing, okay? And they're the ones who teach the students, teach the residents how to actually be excellent physicians in that particular area. Okay. You then need people who are content curators because, again, you go to YouTube and you type in laparoscopic cholecystectomy, you get over 500,000 videos. Okay. But what we know is most of those videos show dangerous maneuvers that should never be done on a human being. So you need someone to go through and find a good example of a laparoscopic cholecystectomy video, right? And then make that available to students because you can't sit there and film everything yourself. You need a technology assessor, somebody who understands that RAT thing that we just showed you, the replacement, amplification, and then transformation, right? And really say, is this technology worth it for our group, for our division, for our department to invest in? Or is it just a fad and it'll just go away? You need some sort of learner navigator or coach and a resident diagnostic assessor. These go hand in hand, okay? Because we know as knowledge and skills keep advancing, more and more students and residents are falling behind. You need someone who takes those students who are falling behind and figure out what's the problem. So probably they need to be experts in neurocognitive evaluations, okay? And really understand, is this a testing problem? Or do they have a learning disability? Is this a knowledge processing problem? What is the issue, right? Why are they struggling in medical school or residency? And then they need to be paired with a navigator or coach, someone who takes them along, meets with them every single week, and makes sure they improve. Okay, and so again, everybody finishes. And then finally, you need a few people in each department who are scholars and researchers. Okay, you probably don't need a ton of them. Okay, but you need someone that takes all this stuff that you guys figure out and disseminates it to everybody so that we as a world learn from each other and don't sit there and keep reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. Okay? It's a lot, I know. Okay, we're done, okay? So bottom line, all right, the technology I think offers you many solutions, but it's ultimately just a tool, okay? And you really have to think about how is it ultimately helping you as a teacher? Most of all, stay calm, all right? Because again, it's easy to get frustrated when using technology. It almost never works correctly. Okay, so you just try to stay calm, have fun, right? And be transparent with people. You know, I say, I just went to this workshop. This guy from Harvard was showing this application. I'm going to give it a try. Okay, but realize you may fail. It's totally fine. All right. Thank you very much. Kap kun makap. Thanks so much. Here's our education research group. Pear is here somewhere. I'm trying to find the picture there. You see, Pear, do you see yourself here? Where are you? Maybe you didn't give a picture. All right, send me the picture. We'll make sure you're added in here. It's a big group. Any questions I can answer for anybody? Yeah.
I have the question. I've nowadays the technology is increased maybe 2 times for 2 years and also in educational technology. But then you said that the learning process is the same. So how can we justify to use which technology to imply to our class or our activity? You try it, you test it, or you can be look at your learning objective first and decide which way, which track with.
Yeah, either approach is fine. I would argue, though, it's better. The issue is if you try and map it only to your learning objectives, sometimes there are technologies that you actually find a new way to use it that other people haven't thought of already, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't try it first. So my recommendation is, especially for the ones that are free, is to try to have an interest group, right, of people who like to use education technology for medical education, and divide up the ones that you think are interesting, and have everybody, one person try it and then report back to the group and say what it actually, is it helpful or not helpful and why, instead of every single person trying it. Right. But the key is, I think, is that some of these technologies, again, I'm thinking of, for example, the animated video one. Okay. When that came out originally, like I said, we were using it for patient education materials, right? Nobody ever thought that you would use it for resident education. But then somebody pointed out that there was a plane, right, on the animated video. And then we thought, oh, that's interesting, and didn't think anything of it until a couple months later when a emergency medicine resident came to us and wanted to create this in-flight emergency series. Then all of a sudden it all makes sense, right, to use. So some of it is understanding the potential of the education technology. And the only way to understand the potential is to try it. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I have a chance to try, and my problem is how can you in the first group that I try, and maybe the result is fail, I will adapt it. So there is not the same class or same process that the learner can learn from the class. So how can did you have that problem when you teach, or how can you
Okay. So I think I understand. So the thing to remember about education technology, okay, is that it will never be like basic science, where you have a control group and an intervention group, and you change the variable and see what happens, right? Very rarely will an education technology perform better than traditional teaching, right? And the reason is because your assessment instrument is probably not set up for it. So I give you an example, okay? They did a study, right, where they wanted to study note writing, okay? So they took 300 freshmen in a basic psychology class, okay, and had them only take notes by hand, okay? They had the same class, it meets immediately afterwards, also 300 freshmen, but all of them were told they have to take notes on a laptop only. They cannot take notes by hand. Okay. They then did an assessment at the end of the year. Okay. And found out that the students, okay, who take notes by hand do worse on knowledge recall questions, but better on conceptual questions on the final exam. Why do you think that is?
be the design of the technology notes cannot know the conceptual or out of the technology border.
Yeah, right? It's because it makes sense, right? If they're taking notes in Word or something, they can't like draw arrows and do other thing, right? Fine. So they repeat the study next semester, okay? But this time they do 300 first-year students, right? Only take handwritten notes. 300 students only take laptop. They find the exact opposite results. The students who take notes by hand do better on factual questions and worse on recall questions. The heck, right? So they do interviews and they ask the students, what is going on, right? We just did this study twice and we have completely opposite results each time, okay? And it turns out that some students like taking notes by hand And some students like taking notes by laptop. But if you force them to learn in a way they don't like, they do worse. Yeah. Right? But again, you wouldn't think it, right? Looking at the pure assessment, you would make a very good explanation for what happened, right? But it turns out it's because we're not asking the right questions, right? And this is where the interviews come in, okay? I think what you're going to find is the same thing, right? So you do education technology. They may not learn more, but they may be more engaged, okay? So maybe they learn more about other topics that are adjacent to what you taught and what you tested on. But in terms of what you actually tested, it ends up being about the same. Who knows, right? But that's why this kind of randomized blinded control study does not work great for education technologies. Sure.
Since we are dealing with educators, medical educators, who varies in age groups, how do you foresee we go about in terms of enhancing educational technology? Do we see educational technology as a literacy, or do we see them as something that we need to recall them all the time, bringing them back, giving them the new technologies, and encouraging them to use it? Because otherwise we can think of it as literacy, where kids nowadays, you throw them an AI, they pick it up real fast. We don't need a class for it. If we're going to treat them like a tool, like a calculator, perhaps we shouldn't have a class teaching how to use a calculator. So my question is, like, what's the right way to go about this in terms of how we encourage medical educators to go about with educational technology?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. My bias is that it is about literacy, right? Because, for example, my boss and my mentor, Rich Hoden, I remember when he first learned to use Uber, right? The app Uber, right? To ride sharing, right? So you call for a car, and he would tell people all the time. He's like, I just learned how to use Uber. And we're like, it's not Uber, it's Uber, right? You sound stupid when you call it Uber. Nobody calls it Uber, it's Uber. Okay. So that's the problem, right? Is that they have to at least be able to talk about it with someone, right? And certainly need to understand that, when a student comes up to them and say, hey, how come you're not using Kahoot? Right? They need to be able to understand, what does Kahoot mean? Right? Like, what are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about gamification of my slides. Okay, let's talk about that. Okay, type of thing, right? So I think for especially older faculty who maybe didn't grow up with technology, it needs to start with the literacy. Interestingly, though, if you look at uptake of technology, at least in the United States, the fastest growing users of technology is actually people over the age of 60 in the United States, which is interesting. We think it's because they have a lot more time on their hands, but we don't really know why, okay? But it's really interesting that just because they didn't grow up with it, you should not assume they don't like it, okay? But they do need patience as you kind of talk about it, and they do need kind of reminders about what you're doing. Now, for the young people who grew up with the technology, we really focus on guidelines of usage. Not how to use it, why you should use it, and what context is good, what context is illegal, right? And you should not do it this way, right? That's really where we focus on the most with the younger people. The other thing is the younger people, especially medical students, they may have better facility with the technology, but they don't understand yet what it means to be a physician, right? They don't, because they're not there yet, and so it's maybe better for a middle career physician who still remembers what it was like to kind of help guide them in the usage, if that makes sense. Any other questions?
For your experience,
Sure.
can be one day that the technology take part of us, no teacher anymore.
Yeah, actually, and it's not. It's soon. It's going to be soon, and I think again the key here, and that's why I brought up that kind of future medical educator role slide. Right, we need to maintain our relevance, right, or we will be replaced. Right, and so the key here again. The AI is very good right now, but it still hallucinates, right? So right now, you still need us to check it, right? And make sure what it's teaching makes sense, okay? It also lacks experience, right? So yes, it can teach, but it can't put it into context for the student, right? And thank God it does not have hands or it can touch anything, right? Because otherwise the surgeons would be out of a job. Okay, so the key here is that I think as the visual, so you guys may already know this or not, but right now they're hooking up the AI to optical recognition technology, right? And the cameras are now more sophisticated than the human eye can see. So the goal is to show it skin lesions, and then it can diagnose the skin lesion and then offer treatment suggestions. Okay, that's already here, right? The percent accuracy of dermatological skin lesions is approaching 90%. And some of you are thinking, wow, that's good because it's not 100%. But remember, the average human is also not 100%. It's actually far worse, right? So again, it's probably going to be kind of like, the patient goes, they show the skin lesion, they comes up with a differential diagnosis, and then they go see the dermatologist, who then narrows it down to one, right? And then offers treatment. That's how they're going to maintain their relevance. But you look at radiologists, pathologists, it's bleak, right? Because the AI is currently performing better than the average radiologist, better than the average pathologist, because everything they're doing is image based. It's all digital imaging, right? So there's no conversion necessary. The AI is just following along, So I don't know about you guys, but for us, in both pathology and radiology now in the United States, they are offering IT training to all residents, machine learning, and then also maybe doing a master's degree in information science, with the idea that if you can't beat them, you should join them, right? And at least try to help them so that when they take over the world, they need you still to work with them, right? And so it's the same idea, right? I think that we as educators need to keep figuring out how to maintain our relevance as the AI gets better and better and better. And the only way to do that is to keep following along.
My question is not clear. I mean, maybe if maybe have one day that the student don't need human mentor like us, or human teacher like us, or maybe one day they don't need mentor coaching anymore, or maybe the AI can be mentoring better than us, something like that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, mentorship and coaching is really about life experience, right? And I'm not sure an AI will ever be able to achieve that sort of thing. Maybe, I mean, eventually, but I think that is good job security. So that is why I put that up. That is one of the future roles, right? Is a learner, coach, or mentor, because that's going to be good job security, I think, for at least our lifetime. Okay, but ultimately, you're right. Maybe someday it'll be to that.
So maybe our new teacher skill that to have in nowadays is to be the good mentor and use the proper technology to enhance your mentor skill, your class, right? Are you agree with that?
Yeah, I think other ways coaches are using it is, and you guys may already know this, but the coaching literature is very confusing because coaching literature comes from both psychology, sociology, sports, and medical education. It's like all over the place, And so what some coaches are using the AI for is to help distill down the literature into themes, help make it more understandable so that you can be a better coach. Yeah.
And I know that you want us to like stay calm,
Mhm.
but how to fight like a FOMO, fear of missing out? There's so many things going on very fast. Everything come out every single second. What would be your recommendation on like how to keep calm with this like situation?
Yeah. Are you guys familiar with RSS feeds? Okay. So for those of you who are not, what you do, okay. So what you do is you go to PubMed, okay, and you have to create an account. It's free, okay? Once you create an account, you create an RSS feed. What that means is you pick topics that you would like to learn about, and it sends it to you directly to your inbox. Okay, but the nice thing about it is you can summarize how often you want to receive it, right? Then you take the literature it sends you and you put it into the large language model to summarize, okay, especially if it's a lot, right? And that way you don't get overwhelmed. Okay, and what you'll see is that yes, it is changing every day, but it's still incremental. Okay, like most technologies, like they look at the number of what do you call it, not transistors, but number of circuits they can fit on a chip. It's called Moore's law, right? And for a long time it's been basically doubling just as Moore predicted. Okay, but the point is that it will eventually plateau, right? Because we're going to get into nanophysics, right? I mean, there's just no way it gets any smaller, right? Same problem here. It will eventually plateau and people will catch up. The question is how good will it be by the time it does plateau? Who knows, But in the meantime, that's a good way to keep up, right? And make sure you don't get overwhelmed. The other thing is to really think about, one of the dangers of RSS feeds is that you create an RSS feed on everything, right? Adult learning, curriculum design, program evaluation, learner remediation, it's too much, right? Just focus on the things you really see as your future in education. Or if you're already a leader in education, right? You're already a nurse educator. What are the problems you deal with day in, day out? What are the things that really you need to focus on, and focus on that.
So since somebody brought up the topic of um, generative AI potentially becoming a better coach than human coaches, I was thinking there are two aspects. So there's a probability that they would have their knowledge would continue to grow in terms of knowledge, so they can probably coach students in terms of knowledge better. And then there's this other aspect that it's about like the humanity aspect. I have been hearing a lot of people already saying that they enjoy the company of ChatGPT than real humans. Like they can ask ChatGPT anytime and they would be always nice to us. We don't get scolded when we ask them, stupid questions or so ever. So what can we as humans learn from ChatGPT to be better coaches to students in this aspect?
Yeah, so there's good things and bad things. So I think where ChatGPT and other large models excel is that they are programmed, right, to be supportive. Okay, they are programmed in general to be very positive, very complimentary, right, never negative, and there are safeguards on it to ever prevent it from basically telling someone to hurt themselves or to, do something that would somehow negatively affect their health. Okay. The danger with that is that some learning, some remediation, some coaching is uncomfortable, not just for the coach, but also for the learner. Because we know, right, that you guys heard the expression, smooth waters make bad sailors. Have you heard that expression? Okay. It's the idea that as a learner, sometimes you need to have rough waters. You need to be challenged. You need to fail. And that is the only way you get better as a learner. Right? And where these large language models are currently falling down is if you do fail, it tells you to go do something else. because it wants to support you, right? It doesn't want to see you unhappy. So it says, go try something else, right? But we know as humans, that's the wrong advice, right? And especially if we see that potential in that student, right? And that is going to be very difficult to ultimately digitize, right? That ability to see the potential that that student has that they may not even recognize in themselves and get them there, right? And that's why, again, I think we have some job security for a while. But again, let's see what happens. Yeah.
Dear Professor, may I ask a question about the electronic portfolio?
Mhm.
Is there any system or platform for the students' e-portfolio in Harvard Medical School? Could you share me, please?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of companies that have been making a lot of money off of selling e-portfolios. And I am going to maybe tell you something controversial. I would say it's probably better to just pick whatever comes with your laptop. So for example, if you have a Microsoft Windows-based laptop, Microsoft OneNote is excellent. Basically, I just show you guys this. So OneNote, for those of you who never used it, it allows you to collect everything on a topic. Okay, so you can put, for example, everything that you have done, right, for teaching, right? So every time you get a course evaluation, you put it in there. Every time you create a curriculum or a PowerPoint, you put it in there. Every time you update your CV, you put it in there, right? And that's an easy way to then act as an e-portfolio. Okay. The other power is educators, right? You can see I have all sorts of topics, right? Like everything from vacation to Buddhism. Okay. It's just anything that interests me, I put it in there. Okay. And you can see, right, like for vacation, right? Like Madagascar. Nope, it didn't load up. Hold on a second. Los Alamos, New Mexico. Okay. Some of you are thinking, why on earth would you want to go there? Right? But it turns out there's a link, right, to a very interesting store that I wanted to go see. Okay. Or Angola. I don't know why these aren't loading up. It's interesting. At any rate, normally it shows the articles. Okay. And then you can just click on it, right, and go see the source material if you want to go see it, right? But maybe it's gone. Maybe the internet doesn't have it anymore. But at least you have a copy. Right. So it's a really nice way of acting almost as a secondary brain. Right. Now, Dropbox, you could do that with. The problem is it's very hard to sort in Dropbox. And let's be honest, the folder structure is not ideal for human memory, right? Because, you're looking at this folder and you're like, where did I put it? I can't remember. And like, why did I call it that? So instead you have a OneNote that says, like promotion materials, right? And everything that's going to be related to your upcoming promotion is already there.
Thank you, Professor.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, so I think we have learned a lot from Professor Roy. I would like all of you to join me in giving him a round of applause for his very good talk about AI and technology in education.